We are delighted to have at our press conference today a few of the members of the African Heritage Delegation. And let me just take a few seconds to introduce each of them. Starting to my left, Mr. Avery Blankley, and to my right, Ms. Paula Watts, and Mr. Michael Nettles, and I am Carolyn Boyd. We're going to begin first with an opening statement. We will then share a bit of our personal stories of our trip to Palestine and Israel, which you will hear a lot more about that as we progress. And then we'd like to take the opportunity to answer any questions you may have. So with that, we'll begin with Mr. Avery Blankley.
Good afternoon. I'll be reading a statement that has come out of our African Heritage Delegation. We, the members of the Interfaith Peace-Builders, first African Heritage Delegation, participated in a study tour to Palestine, Israel, July 16th through the 29th. The delegation consisted of 7 men and 7 women from 25 to 73 years of age, who came from different parts of the United States, the West Coast, the East Coast, New England, the Midwest, and the South. The group included teachers, professors, college administrators, human rights activists, and ministers and lay leaders from both Christian and Islamic faith traditions. Our primary mission was to listen and to learn about the impact of the Israeli occupation upon the lives and livelihood of the Palestinians in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and Israel, as well as those who have been dispersed throughout the world. Many of us have worked in support of civil and human rights in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, the anti-apartheid movement, the Haiti Solidarity Movement, and the anti-war movements against the U.S. wars in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. For 11 of us, this was our first trip to Palestine, Israel. Because of our experience of fighting racism and exploitation in the United States, we are united in our support for civil and human rights of all people of the world. Before going on the delegation, we had an intellectual understanding of the impact of the Israeli occupation on the Palestinian people, but we wanted to get a first-hand account from members of Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations, faith-based groups, and civil society and grassroots organizations. Then I think that we will have. Then we have had these following conclusions that we have concluded. Based on our observations and discussions with Palestinians and Israelis, we have come to the following conclusions. Number 1, the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the blockade of the Gaza Strip are in direct violation of the international laws and several United States resolutions. Number 2, the occupation has led to the physical, psychological, and spiritual oppression of Palestinians in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and Israel, as well as the forced expulsion of millions of Palestinians from their homes, farms, businesses, and their homelands. And I think I am going to ask Mike to come up and finish the resolution and to share stuff. Paula?
Number 3. In addition to the illegal occupation of the West Bank and the blockade of the Gaza Strip, the Israeli government, many Israeli businesses, and wide swaths of Israeli society discriminate against Palestinians with Israeli citizenship and against Mizrahi Jews, Jews of Arab descent, who are citizens of Israel. And the 4th point, the Israeli occupation and the suppression of Palestinian rights conform to the United Nations definition of apartheid. As a result of our findings and conclusions, we adopted the following resolutions. Number 1, we call on African Americans and all people of goodwill to support an end to the occupation including the removal of all Israeli settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the dismantling of the apartheid wall, the end to the military and economic blockade of the Gaza Strip, the granting of full equality to all Palestinian citizens and Mizrahi Jewish citizens of Israel, and the recognition and the realization of the right to return for Palestinian refugees and internally displaced Palestinians. Number 2. We call for the humane treatment of Palestinian children and adults in the custody of the Israeli Defense Forces and the Israeli police, the release of all political prisoners, and an end to indefinite detentions without trial. Number 3. We call for the United States government to cease its military aid of $3 billion of our tax dollars annually to Israel, which, in the name of security, is used to further oppress, harass, maim, and kill Palestinians. Number 4. We endorse the international campaign calling for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions against Israel in support of Palestinian freedom, justice, and equality. And lastly, we call on the United States citizens to join an Interfaith Peace-Builder delegation and travel to Palestine and Israel to learn about the impact of the occupation firsthand.